Welcome to the Road to Great Health podcast, where we discuss natural solutions to today's worst health problems. I'm Dr. Kevin Lenderman from Dr. Kevin's Wellness Clinic in South Louisiana, and I'm joined by Dr. Rob DeMartino from Las Vegas, Nevada. Doc, how's it going today?
Doing great, man. How about yourself?
I'm super excited about our topic today because this is something that we're seeing more and more of. Our topic today is thyroid disorders. And just a few decades ago, this was a rare thing. And now it's everywhere.
Yeah, I was reading a medical textbook from, it was the 80s, it was 1982. And it was talking about how Hoshimoto's is this incredibly rare diagnosis. And now here we are, 40 years later, and it's the most common autoimmune diagnosis. And it's not because of better testing or because we know more. It's just exploding.
Right. And a lot of it, which we're going to get into, just has to do with the environment that we're in and just, what we're exposed to. And the thyroid is such a critical organ because it's like the gas pedal of your car. It speeds you up and slows you down. And we talk to so many people that, feel like they just don't have the metabolism or the gas pedal that they should have. And do you find that in your practice as well?
Yeah, so the two most common things that you hear about are what? You hear that they're fatigued. And the telltale giveaway sign for thyroid with fatigue is no matter how much they sleep, they don't feel better. Right, Doc, I could sleep 6 hours, I could sleep 8 hours, I could sleep 10 hours, I could sleep 12 hours, I still feel bad. That's the giveaway that it's thyroid. So, they have the fatigue issue and the lack of being able to solve the fatigue issue with more sleep, and they have the weight. And really, when weight comes down to it, it's all about metabolism. But metabolism is not just how quickly you lose weight, it's how efficiently do you take raw materials and turn it into energy. If you do that efficiently, you blow off the rest as heat, you stay thin, you have a quote-unquote fast metabolism, and you have a lot of energy. So it really just puts them into a different type of metabolic syndrome.
Yeah. And I don't know if you find this in your office, but the depth of treatment in the medical field that they are doing for thyroid is almost laughable.
It's completely laughable. I had a patient come in the other day, and she's got every symptom of thyroid humanly possible. And she said, no, the doctor checked my thyroid. He said, it's completely amazing, and there's no sign of Hoshimoto's, and everything is doing great. And I said, well, do you have the blood work? And she said, yeah, I brought it for you. And she shows it to me, and all she has is TSH. It's the only marker that she has on there. Now again, the way that they decided to treat, test, look at thyroid was created in 1961. It is still the exact same as it is today. It was exact the same way 25 years ago when we were in school. It's the exact same it is now. And we know a heck of a lot more. We have a heck of a lot more capabilities. Laughable is a nice term, put it that way.
Right. It's just so lazy. Oh, low TSH, take Synthroid, bill it, code it, see you next time.
And part of the problem, too, to be fair, is the second most common reason why a medical doctor will trigger a review by the board is giving thyroid medication when it's not indicated. So now the number one reason is cholesterol medications. Now, when they don't give cholesterol medications when it's indicated, that's a whole other podcast and soapbox we'll get onto at that point, I'm sure. But with thyroid medication is the insurance companies really drive a lot of this because look, we don't want you testing all these things because they're going to test TSH and they're going to look at T4 and that's what they're going to medicate off of. The rest of the numbers they don't really do. So the insurance companies are like, well, why are we going to look at all these markers if you're not going to do anything about it, right? That's the medicated marker. So if that marker's okay to like your thyroid's fine. And we get these poor people been like, it's not my thyroid, my doctor checked that, but they've been sick for like 3 years. They have every symptom of thyroid. And then when we look deeper, it's 100% their thyroid. And they've been on this wild goose chase for years because they measured TSH and they said, oh, it's not your thyroid.
Right. And what Dr. Rob's talking about when he says they only tested TSH. So your thyroid works like an assembly line. There are several different steps to end up with usable thyroid hormone. And in our panel, the one that Dr. Rob designed, we check every step. So our thyroid panel is like 10, 12 different markers just to look at every step in this assembly line. When you're making a car, you have one person put the wheels on, one person put the doors, one person puts the windshield wipers on. So if every time a car comes off the assembly line, the doors are backwards, you know what step messed that up. Right. And you can go work on fixing that step. And that's very similar to how we work on thyroid is you got to look at the whole panel so you can see where it's breaking down so we know where to work on.
It becomes really obvious. Like I sat with a patient not too long ago, and she's like, I have a thyroid problem. She was diagnosed with the thyroid problem. She's like, it's not Hashimoto's. She forcibly made them check that for her, right? So like when we find like people run more thyroid stuff where they come in with more thyroid labs, it's because the patient is educated enough to ask for those things. And when I looked at it and I looked at her pattern, I said, well, you don't have a thyroid problem. So you have a pituitary gland problem. Mm-hmm. And she said, well, what makes you say that? Just look at the numbers, right? Like this number is not going to this number. That's not a thyroid problem. That's the pituitary gland, which tells your thyroid to go. This is why no matter how much you do, if your thyroid doesn't know to go, if your manager doesn't tell you when to show up to work, it's not your fault that you don't know when to show up, right? It's the manager's fault. Yeah. Pituitary doesn't tell it to go. It's not going to go. Once we fix that, everything was good.
Right.
It becomes really obvious.
It does. And so what Doc's talking about there is your pituitary is kind of like the manager of looking at how much thyroid comes in and then producing thyroid stimulating hormone if you need more. So if you don't have enough coming in and it's not telling it, it's not a pituitary problem. I'm sorry, it's not a thyroid problem. It's a pituitary problem, not recognizing that you need to speed up the game here.
Yeah. And
it becomes pretty obvious when you look at our blood panel.
Yeah, it's really straightforward. Like I said, you're looking at these steps like you're good here, you're good here, you're good here. We lost you from here to here. Now we have to figure out why that happened and then come up with a solution for that. Because it's just something that no matter what medications they come out with, it's not something they're ever going to be able to do with the medications, because the medications for thyroid, really thyroid treatment is just another fancy term for hormone replacement. Right.
And so I was actually this morning, I was talking to one of my female patients that had a thyroid problem, and she just so happened to have two of her sisters there and her daughter. And I was drawing out the thyroid and how it all worked, and they were just blown away because they all had thyroid problems. And I was drawing it out, and their jaws were open. Like, why didn't anybody ever tell us this?
And again, it's not like privileged information. I mean, it's out there. It's just not the way we're taught. It's not the way we're taught to test. It's not the way that it's conventionally taught. And again, if you do that stuff, you're going against the grain a little bit. I try not to draw stuff for patients because my drawing is pretty embarrassingly bad. Your drawing's probably a little bit better than mine, but I write all that out for them. And I can't imagine like how many videos I've done where it just says, hey, look, this is how the thyroid works. And people are like, I learned more from that 5-6 minute video than all these years in going to endocrinology. And I'm like, because they're not really looking at solving this problem. They're looking at it going, your thyroid's not making enough hormone. Here, take Synthroid. Or levothyroxine, or whichever drug of choice you want. That's just synthetic T4. So it doesn't solve why you're not making that thyroid hormone. It certainly doesn't solve Hashimoto's, right, if there's an autoimmune component of it. They're just saying, here, take you're bad at doing this, here, take it, and we'll think that this is great. And then they still feel pretty bad, actually, usually.
Yeah. And if you guys want to see us do that drawing, we both have videos of us doing this drawing on our website where we draw out each step and we lay out what you have to look for each step, and it's a pretty profound video. And so if you guys want to see us actually draw that out, we both have that on our website. But there are other things that can affect the thyroid as well, like heavy metals can clog up the receptor sites, and it could be other hormonal issues that look like thyroid. There's just a lot to look at there. And so watching those longer videos on thyroid would definitely be a great idea to do, for sure.
It's a common problem that gets overlooked a lot because a lot of the symptoms can be attributed to other things. Well, I'm really fatigued, but I'm just under more stress, right? But then you look at it, it backs up, your thyroid is, I always say to my patients, the thyroid's like the mom. It always goes last, right? It helps everybody else, but it goes last, right? So it backs up your cardiovascular system, right? It backs up your muscular system. It certainly backs up your liver system. I have a patient this morning call me, and she's like, they're telling me I have hyperthyroidism. And she said, but they don't know why. But they want to give her meds to lower her thyroid. So I'm looking at it, I'm going, well, if you're hyperthyroid, it means something else is going bad in your body that your thyroid has to back up. And it's typically something pretty leveraged. So do you have other labs? Yeah, I have these. Oh, your liver's in big trouble. So if your thyroid backs up your liver, it's going to go hyper to try to help that. So then their solution was, well, just give her medications to lower her thyroid. That doesn't solve the liver problem. It solves the heart problem. I understand their perspective. Well, they want to put pressure on the heart. But it's not going to solve her problem. And she's just going to have another problem and another problem and another problem down the road. And it becomes painfully obvious. Like I want to bang my head against the wall after a while looking at some of these tests after a bit because I'm like, God, this is so obvious. But you have to be thinking that way. And that was the whole purpose of doing this podcast, is to try to just help the ideology of how you think about it.
Yeah. And guys, one of the things Dr. Rob talks about, and I think this is so profound, is that the difference in philosophy of the way we look at the human body and the medical field looks at the human body is, in their mind, it's like, your body's stupid, it's messing this up, we need to change it. Well, your body's stupid again, it's raising your thyroid, or your body's stupid, it's raising your blood pressure. Whereas if you really look at the deeper answers, your body's doing it best it can with a real crappy hand that it's been dealt, and you just got to help it. You just got to figure out why it's struggling and work on solving that.
Yeah, you have to change the mentality from it's stupid and it's made a mistake to why would it do that? That's the key question. Why would the body do that? Because it doesn't do anything from mistakes. Most of the problems that people have is it's doing it to compensate for something else. These are compensation type of problems. It can't do it this way, so it's got to back up the liver, right? It doesn't have enough to do it, so it has to compensate and do it this way. But when you change that mentality of it's a mistake to why would it do that, everything changes.
Yeah, because your organs don't just quit working for no reason. I mean, could you imagine if your mechanic told you that? Well, your brakes just quit working, so I took them off. You don't need them. You can stop with your feet. Yeah. That's perfectly normal for your brakes to stop working, and it just happens sometimes. Yeah. Like, no one would be okay with that mechanic. Everybody would find a new mechanic. But for some reason, when it comes to our doctors, that's perfectly normal explanation.
Yeah, and I think what lulls the doctors into a sense of false security is, all autoimmune diseases, talk about Hoshimoto's, which is the most common autoimmune disease now, autoimmune disease of thyroid that causes low thyroid. All autoimmune diseases shorten your lifespan. That's unfortunate, but it's the truth of the matter. But Hashimoto's by itself typically doesn't. You'll feel terrible for a really long period of time, but it doesn't kill you faster. So they're like, well, you can live without your thyroid. We'll just cut it out once it gets bad enough or it turns cancerous. And and then we'll give you more hormone to supplant that. But what they don't look at is thyroid disease is a gateway disease. Just like marijuana is a gateway drug, alcohol is a gateway drug, right? Thyroid is a gateway disease. The reasons why thyroid disease will happen will make you have another autoimmune. Statistically, by the time somebody finds out that they have Hashimoto's, 50% of the time they already have another autoimmune disease. So this is something that is going to create, everyone's going to deal with a health problem, right? No one lives forever. No one gets out of here alive. You're going to deal with one thing. I promise you, if these are diagnoses that you're dealing with, it's going to be your one thing, either in that form or what it manifests to into the future.
Yeah. And so thyroid is one of those things, too, that patients really are struggling with it. Like, these people feel bad. It's not that, like a diabetes, those people don't really feel it as much. As somebody that has something with their thyroid, they're not living their best life.
No, and I love old medical textbooks. I read them all the time because those guys and gals really knew how to think, right? Because now we get to a certain point that we stop. Oh, you have a thyroid problem, take the thyroid medication. There's no question as to why that thyroid problem was there, but because the medication now has entered here into the, medication has entered the chat, so that's where the thinking stops. But those guys and gals would look back and say, why would this happen? Right, so somebody who had diabetes, it's okay, you got to look at their thyroid, right? Because thyroid dysfunctions can eventually lead somebody having diabetes somewhere down the road. These things are tied together. And, it frustrates me how much they discount the suffering that these people go through, just because they're like, well, again, it's not a life essential organ. We can cut it out and you can live without it. Yeah, but look, we all want to be around as long as we can, but we want it to be good time. Right, quality is a big deal, along with quantity. So that's incredibly frustrating.
Right, and just treating a low thyroid with Synthroid doesn't actually treat the thyroid anyway. Nothing. I mean, it would be like if a criminal comes and mugs you and takes $100 from you. So you call the police and they give you your $100 back. And then the next day, the same criminal mugs you again and takes the $100, and the police just give you another one back. Eventually, you're going to be, could we arrest this criminal? Like, could we stop this process somewhere? And so instead of just supporting an unhealthy thyroid with Synthroid, we want to see what the thyroid is actually doing, do that assembly line panel of tests so we can see where we can affect it the best.
Right, because the analogy is actually really, really good. Because I don't want to get beat up every day. I would rather just solve this problem at this core. But there is no medication that's going to make your thyroid function normally, which is why, we talk about the idea that it's just hormone replacement. Most people understand hormone replacement. I'm low on a gender hormone, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. They take that hormone to try to offset that. It's doing the same thing with thyroid. It's not true. When people come and say, I have Hashimoto's. All right, what are they doing about it? Well, I'm taking Synthroid. Okay, so they're replacing the hormone that you're not able to make or use. What are they doing about the fact that you have Hashimoto's? And then they kind of look at me. You get the head tilt. And it's a purposeful question, right? It's a purposeful question to kind of point that out. But we get lulled into that sense of security. And we talked about this before, even before the show. We were talking about Synthroid, didn't come on the market till 1949. It was discovered. 1955, it comes on the market. And they've been using it for a really, really long time. And Synthroid didn't get FDA approval till 2002. So they used Synthroid for almost 50 years without FDA approval. Nobody knows that, but it's not a great drug. And it's been around for a long time, and it causes a lot of problems. And if you use thyroid medications for long enough, you will create a secondary thyroid problem called subclinical hypothyroidism, which literally means below what deeper than what your clinician would look at. It literally means your doctor stinks and he didn't look deep enough, which I take personal offense to because I look for subclinical hypothyroidism all the time. But medications will cause that thyroid problem. So even though when you have the patients, I felt better on it for a while, now I'm not feeling so great on it, it's because now you've shifted and we have a secondary problem.
Yeah. And the other thing too is if your thyroid is not working and all you do is add thyroid hormone, eventually the thyroid will get lazier and stop working more. So that's why you have to keep increasing your dose, right?
Yeah, if you don't use it, you lose it type of thing, right? Anything that the body makes in general, you don't want to take because it throws off the feedback loops, right? So it says, I don't know where this came from, but apparently we're making enough, so it slows down the production just to try to create some semblance of balance. The body has no concept that we can mess with it from the outside like that. It just doesn't know that we can do that. And it's a wild perspective. But yeah, if your body's making something, you don't want to take it. You will create another problem at some point. There's times and places for that sort of stuff. Even I break those rules from time to time in emergent situations. But long-term strategy, that's a bad strategy.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing that I see that really frustrates me is a patient's been on Synthroid for 10 years or 15 years, and no one ever really looked at why their thyroid failed. But when we look, we find out this whole time they were autoimmune. So they had a runaway autoimmune disease that no one caught simply because they didn't look deep enough into it. And then we find they have one or two other autoimmune diseases that probably could have been headed off if we would have known that way back when they first had it looked at.
Sure. Yeah, we get a lot of patients who come in and say, well, I have MS. And when we go through all their health histories, well, I have Hashimoto's, but that has nothing to do with it. No, that has everything to do with it, right? If you're autoimmune, it's an autoimmune disease, somewhere down the line. Like I said, it's that gateway ideologies that's going to lead us into it. And the reason that they don't look, again, the way that we were taught, is whether it's Hashimoto's, whether it's low thyroid, the answer is when your TSH goes off, they're going to give you Synthroid or levothyroxine, right? It doesn't change the treatment. So if it doesn't change the treatment, they're not going to run all of those things because eventually you're going to look at it and say, well, that's just what it is. And I remember even when I went to my first thyroid seminar, I was fresh out of school, and I was like, I'm going to go take a course on thyroid, and I went there. And the guy told us, and he wrote a book about thyroid and everything. I said, if they have Hashimoto's, once there's antibodies, they're going to be there forever, never tested again. You can manage their symptoms and you can manage their thyroid, but you can't, that doesn't go away. And I just didn't buy that. It didn't make sense to me at the time. I'm like, how could people get cured from massive diseases, but Hashimoto's is unfixable? Like your body can't, you can get over cancer, but you can't get over Hashimoto's. I didn't buy it. And again, what that stuff usually, when comments like that, what it usually means is not the way that we do it. It can't be fixed the way that we do it.
Yeah, because we literally see it every day.
Thankfully.
In our practices, thankfully. Yes, absolutely. And Doc, back to what you were saying earlier about how the old doctors used to think and reason a little bit more. I think one of the big reasons why we don't see that much now is also managed care. They've got 5 minutes. They've got to be in the room, diagnose it, prescribe it, code it, bill it, and go on to the next patient. And that's kind of the only way to make a practice work now because their fees are cut because they're relying on the insurance billing model.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of time that we'll take behind the scenes to pull apart a patient's case who has something complicated like an autoimmune disease to figure out why it happened, what's going on, how do you fix it, all those different types of things. I mean, that takes an inordinately large amount of time. Like, when we sit down, we have I have a ton of questions, right? We're going to ask about this, we're going to ask about that.
Yeah.
It takes time to go through all those things. It takes time to pull all of this apart. I couldn't do it in 5 minutes as I'm like writing a prescription pad and running out of the room. It takes digging, but the answers are in there. Right? Again, my big frustration is we act like this is unknown. When we say, I don't know what causes this problem, scientifically to say that now, as we sit here at the end of 2025, which I can't believe it's the end of 2025, but to sit here at the end of 2025 is a ridiculous statement to say. Now, we could say a real statement is, we don't know what causes it because it doesn't fit in the paradigm that the medical system exists. That's fair. But to say that we don't scientifically have this understanding, it's an unreasonable statement to make at this point.
Yeah. It's really funny what you said about the time that we spend. Yesterday, I was in the room with a patient. It was a thyroid patient. I was doing her initial consultation. And after about 20 minutes, I noticed she kept like glancing at the door. And finally I said, are you expecting? Because it was distracting. I said, are you expecting someone? She goes, no, I just can't figure out why you haven't left yet.
She's waiting for the staff to come in and save you.
Yeah. And I said, no, I am not. I'm in here till we figure this out. I don't work for Blue Cross. I work for you. Right. We're going to get this figured out. And like you just saw her whole like shoulders drop and she was so relieved that like, yeah, this guy's going to stay here till we get this figured out. And patients aren't used to that.
Yeah. Look, complicated problems usually, unfortunately, have complicated solutions. I wish it was easy. I wish I had one magic thing or one magic wand that I could wave around or one magic supplement or something that somebody could take and would solve the problem. But that's just not reality, right? Every once in a while you have a syndrome like that and they hit a home run. But the majority of these autoimmune cases aren't going to work like that. And it takes time and it takes effort and knowledge and expertise and experience to be able to do all that sorts of stuff. But it is funny that you get people like, this is pretty heavy duty, doc. And I'm like, well, yeah, like there's not one arch villain that's causing it all. We got to figure out all these different things and then come up with a game plan. I was like, if you saw how much time I spend outside of here without you in here trying to figure this out, I was like, it's a lot. So, but it's worth it because that's where the good stuff comes from.
Right. Because it's not uncommon at all for our patients to bring us a 3-ring binder full of medical records to look through. I mean, that happens to us all the time.
I love the binders. Love the organization. My favorite thing. And I'm like, don't worry about it. Like, bring everything in. Don't worry if it's... Because they're so polite, too. They're like, I don't know if this is helpful. Doesn't matter. Let me go through it. I'd rather more than less. We can find stuff that's in there that's maybe a clue and we can start knowing where... it can kind of expedite the process a little bit. But they've tried everything. They go everywhere. They try everything. And the saddest part is it's not doing more of the same thing over and over and over again. It's, you got to change the ideology, right? Spending more money to do the same thing over and over and over again, with research and all the things that it's not going to change it. We've spent enough now. It's not the answer. We know that. You got to look a different way. And that sometimes is tough to get systems like that to change. They don't change from the inside very quickly.
Right. And they're very particular about their 3-ring binder full of medical records too. I'm like, can I keep that overnight? They kind of go, I don't know. I'll guard it with my life.
I promise I've never lost one.
Yeah. And then, but you can, the thing that we see on this is a patient comes in and goes, oh, I've had tons of blood work. Well, you've had one page of blood work over and over and over, but it's the same page. They just keep doing the same tests over and over and over, expecting it to look different. Our blood work's like 12 pages, but it's all different data. It's all different information. And that way we can see the deeper answers. Doing one set of blood work over and over is not tons of blood work.
No.
It's redoing the same test.
Yeah, waiting for something to catastrophically fail. But even that said, like usually when people bring me that one page of blood work, they're looking at it very coldly, like, oh, this is high or this is low. I'm looking at where it's high and where it's low, what these two numbers mean to each other. You do the same thing. When we're digging that all out, I mean, I can usually spot 2 or 3 problems off of that one page of blood work. Now, there might be in a range. I'm like, but if that's here, if this is on the bottom of that range and this is on the top of that range, we have a problem there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, so, but the nuances, they're like bankers. They just look at the highs and lows, and that's kind of all they care about. There's no nuance of reading this. They're not figuring it out. There's no critical thinking anymore.
Right. And one of the problems, even on the blood work that they do for thyroid, is their ranges are ridiculously big. I mean, I think their TSH now is 0.3 to 5 or something like that is normal.
It's almost up to 5 now. They've been fighting about this for as long as I can remember, that there's no way that range. So if somebody's up at the high end of that TSH level, they have a functional thyroid problem. They're still in range, but that thyroid is not going to be, kicking butt and taking names over here.
Yeah, and the way I explain that to a patient is their normal is 3 to 5, but you can feel bad at 4.5 or 4.
Oh, you will,
even though you're in their normal range, right? It still doesn't mean you're optimal. So the ranges that Doc and I use on our blood work is what we call optimal ranges. Like, what do you need to be a healthy person, instead of just what do you need to be alive?
Right.
So that we can see what the optimal ranges should be on all these numbers.
Because there are people who are functionally unwell, right? Like you see that on their testing, and but again, it's not taught to be looked at that way. It's a lot of ratios. It's a lot of mathematics, which I didn't get into a doctor to be mathematics, but there's a lot of mathematics in looking at ratios and things like that. But the good stuff lies in all that details.
Right. And so people out there that are struggling with low energy, brittle nails, hair falling out, weight gain, all of these type of symptoms could be subclinical thyroid problems. It's just no one has taken the time and data and energy to sit down and figure out what all these numbers mean for you. And that's what Dr. Rob has taught me over the last 12 years of studying with him to do, is to how do we break all of this down and find out what's actually wrong with you. Not if you fill into this little box, but how do we actually solve your health problems?
And it's so important because, again, the detail is what matters. Knowing exactly what step is the problem. And if it's Hashimoto's, it's very different than hypothyroidism. It's the same outcome, but different reasons why it happens. And when you're trying to get to the cause to actually fix what that is, that matters, right? Because these are two completely different causes. And it's not that Hashimoto's, can't be solved or it doesn't go away. Now, again, is there a medication to do that? No. Is there one vitamin supplement to do that? No. Is it purely caused by nutritional deficiencies? No, it's not. I know that makes me like public enemy number one of the functional medicine guys. And I'm like, but it violates the laws of cause and effect, right? If there's nutritional deficiency that causes a problem, this exists. If you're low in vitamin D, you get rickets. If you're low in vitamin C, you get scurvy, right? There's about 10 of these diseases. So what vitamin deficiency causes Hashimoto's?
There's no such thing.
Right? They're like, well, it depends on the person. No, it doesn't, because that's not the thing. It violates cause and effect, right? Cause says this is the cause, this is the effect. So it's not that. Now, again, for most of the people, they have a structural problem, and it's creating that damage. But they'll just say, well, don't worry about that. Your antibodies are always going to be there, but we'll try to manage your thyroid the best we can. And that's not that much different. Managing it with a vitamin, yeah, they don't have side effects, but it's the same game. You're managing a problem without making it go away.
Yeah. Doc, I had a patient yesterday or day before yesterday, and her antibodies, now they should be less than 30. Hers were in the thousands. And so we see severe cases of thyroid problems. This isn't somebody with a little mild case. We treat the most severe cases, or we see the most severe cases of thyroid disorders, autoimmune disorders, Hashimoto's, and all the others. And it still applies. Just because your case is severe doesn't mean you still can't dig into this and figure out how to help these people.
Yeah, at this point, I'm kind of happy when it doesn't come in unreadable, right? Like you get those antibodies where it says greater than 1,000. So I'm like, what does that mean? Does that mean 1,001? Does that mean 10,000? I don't know where we are. I had this little girl. She was 12, and she had this giant goiter. And of course, kids are just super nice to each other, right? I mean, I remember growing up, we weren't nice to each other either. But, so again, they were giving her a hard time. And I just saw her again, and she's turning 18. She's going to get her driver's license. The goiter's gone. And her antibodies were greater than 1,000, and now they're in normal range. And I sat with her and her dad, and I was like, look, honey, you're good. Like, you really don't even need to keep coming back and checking in with me. Like, we're okay here. If you want to do it, we could do it in like a year. Just make sure everything's good. Like, the job is done. And she was like, this is so great. And her dad's like, Doc, I just have one question. How? How'd you do it? Like, how? He's like, 'cause we were everywhere with her. And I literally laughed and said, it is the question and a good question. And the answer is, you just have to look at it differently.
Right.
That's the saddest, and it's a sad answer because it's simple enough. Then we got more into it, but it's you just have to change the thought process. We've proven that this doesn't work. Doing it over and over again is the definition of insanity. Change the thought process.
Yeah. And it all goes back to looking at the whole process, looking at the whole assembly line, breaking all of those numbers down for each and every patient and figuring out what is affecting their thyroid so that it can't produce normal thyroid hormone. And that's what we do. Doc and I both spend a lot of time with these thyroid patients breaking all of this down for sure. So if you're out there watching and you're struggling with low energy, fatigue, hair falling out, low thyroid, autoimmune, any of these things, if you're on the West Coast, if you're on the west side of the United States, Dr. Rob covers that side. If you're on the east side, I cover this side over here in deep South Louisiana. We're about 30 minutes from the Gulf of Mexico. So, but we can treat patients from wherever. So if that's you out there, give us a call. We'd love to be able to help you. Doc, today was a good one, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me.
Always fun.
We were out last week. I was deer hunting last week, but I'm back. And so we will have podcast number 4 next week. Doc, have a good day. Thanks. Hey, thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time.